Hi, welcome back. You're listening to Linda Pinizzotto of the Condo Xpert, sponsored by Bayshore Health and Wellbeing here at the Hayes FM. And we're speaking with Randy Lippert, the professor of the University of Windsor. So we've just given some information, so hopefully you'll start receiving some emails and wonderful details about condominium ownership from these condo owners out there.
Absolutely, yes. That's great. I mean, we're really looking forward to hearing from people, and there's a graduate student waiting in Windsor right now.
Oh, fantastic. So getting the lines going, guys.
Right, yeah. It creates a good job for him as well, and her, so there's two of them.
Well, the thing too is that breaking in the universities, I think that I commend you for this because, it's needed. And not only that, university students are the wave of the future for condominiums. I mean, they are our next condo owners. It's not like condominiums are going away anytime soon.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely the case, isn't it? And also people who are interested in condo issues and in researching them. I mean, I think that's what we're trying to develop. And in the grant that I, got for the study, which is the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, which is completely independent. But I mean, the part of the aim and, what we have to show when we get the grant is that we're going to employ students and train them to become, researchers and academics, possibly, but researchers first. And so they're getting experience in interviewing and analyzing data and so on.
If I think of the industry trades, everybody that's working in any of the industries right now are all geared to the operations of the condominium building. So actually what you've just said is interesting because it's actually gearing towards knowledge to conduct the process that you're conducting. But think about all the information that these young students are going to walk away with. And later may very well be directors or condominium board of directors down the road.
Oh, that's right.
And the amount of knowledge that they're going to have.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I mean, you're going to have very knowledgeable people they're going to know a lot about condominiums. And, it's not a topic necessarily that the students, immediately embrace. But once they understand that, the issues involved and, I mean, some of the things you talk about on your program, with respect to law and, engineering and, finance and things like that, they start to see, wait a minute, I mean, there's a lot, going on there. And it does pique their interest.
Well, it's interesting. I actually sat, I guess it was about 3 weeks ago, I spent 7 hours in Superior Court with a condo owner.
Wow.
That was really interesting because unfortunately the judge was not familiar with the Condo Act at all.
Uh-oh.
It floored me. It just absolutely floored me. So when I'm hearing this and I'm thinking there has to be a mechanism out there because of the complexity of condominiums where, knowledge-based information that's readily and easily available is important. And if a judge of Superior Court doesn't have that information, you've got to sit back and think, wow. I mean, we're expecting the everyday person to have the information. We're expecting, we have a huge amount of multiculturalism.
Mm-hmm.
We're pushing really for a declaration, a standardized declaration. That's what the Condo Owners Association is pushing for.
Okay.
Because it's completely ridiculous to have different condo documents in every single condo building. Like if you think about it, using the stats that I just gave out, I mean, think about how many different declarations you have, but so much of it is repetitive.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So what's the point of it?
Yeah.
Specific to the building can be specific. So you can have maybe schedules that are specific, but the overall operations and so on should pretty much be the same all the way around. I don't understand why they would be that much different that every single building has to have a different condo document.
Yeah, no, I mean, that doesn't make sense on the surface. Why, in terms of the democratic, principles that are involved, I mean, why would they vary from building to building? It just doesn't make sense. It's unfortunate that has happened, and that there wasn't more, foresight back in the 60s, but hindsight's 2020, I guess. So I don't see that's something that they shouldn't do. That's for sure.
Maybe that could be one of your questions.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that could be something, somehow if you're able to have condo owners that are willing to give up a copy of their declarations so that you could actually almost to some degree do a comparison.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that would be terrific. Yeah, I mean, again, completely confidential and so on. But yeah, just to see the form of the declaration, be able to compare, definitely that would be interesting, as well as eventually, compare with New York City and the way, and again, they use different language, covenants and so on. But that is, definitely something that we would be interested in receiving if owners were willing to, part with a copy.
Well, exactly, because, I mean, those copies there, they're invaluable for your research. I will guarantee you that condo owners will have these. They'll have them sitting in their closet for 10 years, and they won't even as much as look at them. So, and especially, too, what if it's a condo owner that maybe moved and doesn't need that paperwork anymore?
Sure. No, that's just as relevant. Yeah,
exactly. So really, condo owners out there, or past condo owners, if you do have a copy of your declaration from the past, really, seriously, give it to the University of Windsor. You've got the information from Randy Lippert. Send it over so that they can do a comparison on it, because I think that the information in there, running from different corporations, will spell out a tremendous amount of things, and we will be able to find a way to standardize certain aspects.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, part of the interest in terms of the way that the governance is currently working, and obviously in terms of what would or should perhaps happen in the future. Yeah, I mean, it's always easy to, if we have an interview, it can be either, telephone or personal. Grad students are in Toronto as well, and they could meet with you and you could just give them a copy then as well. Yeah. If that's easier for you, we're certainly open to that as well. We found most people prefer the phone interview. Well, it's a little more comfortable, I guess, with someone they don't
but
know.
But they could actually send it in anonymously.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the thing. I mean, if they have anything or a letter, if they don't want to talk or they don't want to put their name on it, they could send things out anonymously as well.
Definitely, yeah. Right. I mean, and that's only like one, small part of, of the research project. I don't mean that it's small in terms of, what it'll take to look through it. But I mean, I think it just points to the complexity of condo governance. There's so many areas that, we can look at. And because I'm in it for the long term, I'm hoping that there's going to be a number of projects, related to that, but also offshoots of this sort of larger project in over the next decade and so on.
Well, I think the key thing, if you had copies of those, the key thing you could target into right off the bat, would be, number one, would be leased items in the building. Mm-hmm. So what exactly is leased? You see, because a lot of times people don't know what it is that they own. I mean, they own the unit, but do they own the piping? Okay. They own the unit, but are they responsible for balcony repairs? Is that part of their ownership? You see where I'm coming from? Yeah,
and they usually learn that when something goes wrong.
When something goes wrong, right. And then it's expensive. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then leasing as far as equipment in the building. So in other words, do they own their cooling systems or heating systems? And, are they having to pay monthly leases on these things, which hasn't been incorporated in the maintenance fees originally? So, lease contracts and so on. Another one I would probably recommend would be maintenance fees, maintenance fees geared to commercial units that could be on the main levels. Okay, because sometimes their structures are different. There's also something called live-work units, which are totally messed up, and they should can those completely. And that is coming from me, Linda Pinizzotto. They need to can those because people, what they do is they buy a live-work unit, which is residential, and then what they do is they just go and turn it into a commercial office. Then they sit on the board, and that way they don't have to pay the money to buy a commercial office, and they still pay residential taxes. So you may want to do a research on this live-work functionality because...
yes, sounds very interesting arrangement.
Exactly. Yeah. Another thought could be just the way taxations are done. Because, to some degree, they take cost information, they take square footages and past sales in the building and so on. But the square footages are actually not the interior of the unit. They're actually inside the walls.
Okay.
So it's not living space.
Right. Yeah, and so, why are you being taxed?
Yeah, so why are you being taxed on concrete walls as opposed to your living space? I mean, you should be taxed, with respect to what you're living inside. I mean, it's not like a house because you got your land and your house values all combined. But in a condominium, I mean, you've got your airspace, And now you wonder about whether or not you got your concrete space that you're actually paying for as well. So I don't know if that's kind of outside of the realm of things that you're doing, but these are things that are kind of sticking in my mind right now.
I mean, well, those issues will definitely come up people will relate those. I'm fairly confident, and that, I mean, it's, highly dependent on what people tell us. Well, so, and certainly that sounds like something that would be worth looking into as well. Yeah.
So have you found that, like with age in New York and all the different areas in the U.S., like what's an average age of these? Like, are we looking, I don't know where they would be as far as, I mean, the new construction is a no-brainer, but I know with the gatehouse communities and so on, for instance, in Florida, they've been around for years. Mm-hmm. That's been a long time.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I would say, well, I don't want to say they're older than they are in Toronto, but Toronto's had such a, recent rush of condo building that I think on average they probably are much older. And yeah, I mean, the gated communities is really like, late 1970s and mid 80s, I think, is when they really went crazy, and Arizona and to some degree Florida in building those. So those are, I'm guessing, to do research down there, you would be coming up against very different issues than you're coming up against here with more of the newer buildings and so on, just in terms of things starting to peter out and people wondering, well, how are we going to pay for this? Not just roofs, I mean, it's the entire, infrastructure of the operation of the, the gated community in this case. Yeah, what's it going to cost and who's going to pay for it? And then there's the whole thing of insolvency.
But
that's sort of, is out there as a possibility.
That's the interesting part is, have you ever heard the comments where they say that construction, even if you go into a house, okay, and you say the new construction today is much stronger, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. But the interesting part about it is that when you look at a house and you look back at something that was built like 30 years ago, okay, they're not using press boards. They're using much stronger material. Their beams, everything is a lot stronger materials than what they're using today. Mm-hmm. The funny part about it is that with condominiums, between all that controversy that went on glass and so on, so you've got the older buildings that are all, brick, mortar, concrete, that have been around for like 20, 25 years. And the structure of the building, I find it hard to believe that they'd have too much being compromised. Mm-hmm. Do you see?
I see what you're saying.
Do you see what I'm saying? But the new buildings are all glass and aluminum and steel and, the way that the flashings are done and so on. Mm-hmm. So the interesting part about it is that I guess you've got to close your eyes and think, okay, so where are they going to be in 20 years? Because they don't have the brick and the mortar and the concrete.
Yeah, right. So, and I mean, you do hear that about, just your average home that, of course, they're not built the same as they used to be. I mean, that's just a cliche, but I mean, there's a lot of truth to it. And yeah, I mean, those issues are, you're right, at the forefront, I think, as opposed to something that's going to happen, 20 years down the road. And, what happened in Vancouver is a case in point. When I lived there was tremendous condo growth, and after we left, oh wow, what happened? Like, a huge debacle over the ceiling of the buildings against water, and and that isn't something, those are new condos, relatively new.
That's right. So, you look at it and you think, okay, so the older ones have a high maintenance fees right now. The newer ones don't, because they're still going on, what they've speculated would be as far as what their maintenance fees are. But the reserve funds are going to be done the same way that they've been done. They almost maybe have to look at reserve funds and see whether or not they need to be done somewhat differently. Mm-hmm. If your building is from this age to this age, and if it's a newer one from this age to this age, because the past history is different from what the forward future is going to be like.
Mm-hmm. Right. You can't base it on what's happened in the past because the buildings are so different. Yeah, and I mean, that in itself would be interesting in terms of looking at, how those, studies are done, and, is it all science or is there, you said speculation. Yeah, I mean, there must be a lot that goes on there. Let's put it that way at this point, I guess.
I think so. You're listening to Linda Pinizzotto here at the Condo Xpert. We're speaking with Randy Lippert of the University of Windsor. We'll be right back.